If you've tuned into this program over the past 2 or 3 years, you'll recall the alarms that we frequently raised over the efforts by the World Health Organization, a UN entity, trying to give itself more power and authority post-COVID. Well, you'll recall how we also highlighted WHO's incompetent and corrupt handling of the pandemic. Well, last week, we raised the alarm again as the deadline approached for countries to reject the WHO's latest attempt. And thankfully, the Trump administration took action. Here to discuss this, Congressman Tim Walberg. He is the chair of the House Education and Workforce Committee. He represents the 5th Congressional District of Michigan. Chairman Walberg, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Tony, it's good to be back with you, and thanks for highlighting the challenges and the dangers we have in our country and our world today.
Well, what a difference an election makes. Instead of having an administration working behind the scenes to surrender sovereignty, we now have an administration working to protect national sovereignty and saying no to the World Health Organization.
What a unique thought that we would not be a globalist country, but rather stand firmly on the fact that America ought to be leading the world and doing it independently, respecting our sovereignty, our founding principles, our people, and our freedoms. And we don't do that by joining with any other entity and letting them chart the course.
I mean, as the chairman of the House Education Committee, you know so well the devastating effect that bad policies have had on our children and hardworking Americans. I mean, and that's just a kind of a micro of the macro when you look at the United Nations and the World Health Organization. Why would anyone want to put that type of power into the hands of an unaccountable, unelected international organization that could literally take our freedoms away at the next declared international health crisis?
Well, absolutely. And I think it comes, Tony, sitting here dealing every day of my life with the education issues, realizing that the U.S. Department of Education, which thankfully our president wants to abolish, and the Secretary of Education wants the same thing, and I want the same thing, and we know that Congress is the only one that can do that, but we can do some significant reforms, downplaying, right-sizing, depowering in the process. But our citizens for too long have been, especially since 1980 when the Department of Education was formed and put in place, we've been taught a different thing about our country. We've been taught that there are bad things about our country, that we've never learned from our mistakes, and that the world needs to help us along the way. And so WHO, World Health Organization, is one of those. And yet we saw during COVID, the WHO, which was inextricably tied to China,
right,
serve us well, in fact, put us in worse state. And I think our nation suffered as a result of that. And certainly we weren't taken care of medically and in health-wise during that process as well. And you would think we would learn, but there are still people who have been brainwashed to think that someone else has to watch out for America doing the wrong things for its people,
right,
as opposed to the people themselves.
I mean, the closer government gets to the people, the better it is. The further removed it is, the less accountable and the more dangerous it becomes. One final question on the WHO topic, Congressman, is I know this puts an end to it for now, but do you think they'll stop? I mean, I've never seen the United Nations take no for an answer.
No, they won't until we stop the funding, until we separate ourselves from them in a very solid fashion. And I think also potentially putting legislation in place that would require any change back to their ownership of us must not happen unless Congress says so clearly. So I think those are things we ought to consider.
Chairman, I want to go down a lane here that's clearly down the education front. This coming out end of last week. You know, we knew something was wrong. We could smell a rat looking back in the Biden administration when the Attorney General Merrick Garland went after parents who showed up at school board meetings to raise issues about COVID policies, to raise issues about bathroom policies. Now, new evidence as a result of America First Legal going after documentation, finding that they were looking for a hook. This is the DOJ, the Attorney General, looking for a federal hook to criminally charge these parents who were showing up at these public hearings. This is outrageous.
Outrageous, and it makes me even more grateful that Mitch McConnell had the insight and the ability to stop Merrick Garland from ever getting on the U.S. Supreme Court, at least for now. But they just will not accept the fact that this is not what America wants. I think 77 million people said that at the last election. But I've often said, ad nauseum to some of my colleagues on the Education Committee, that the three things we need to get right will make our education system work and our workforce work. If we get it right for the student, the parent, and the teacher, we will succeed. The parent has to be there to central focus. The parents are the ones that brought these children into the world. The parents are the ones that give the opportunity for schools to be in place and have a purpose. And if we make sure that they're center focus, then teachers, I think, will have not only an understanding where they sit in supplementing the parents' education responsibility, but also coming under that authority. So to think that they would ever be considered as domestic terrorists, but just because they stand up to speak for the best impact on their kids' lives is ridiculous, it's horrific, and it's anti-American. So we need to push back on that and make sure that this doesn't happen, to out Merrick Garland and his ilk from moving in that direction, along with the radical teachers union leadership. Is something that fight.
That's such a well-balanced statement where you want to put the child, the parent, and the teacher. And instead of making policy to reach the lowest common denominator, we understand the role of the parent and we challenge them to fill that role. Chairman, we're out of time. Always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.